Hello, I'm Marisa Bretherton-Mackay, Group Support and Business Operations Manager at RDA UK. In this short presentation, which is part of the Road to Restart series, I'll be guiding you through the process of completing your COVID-19 risk assessment. So make yourself comfortable, get a pen and paper to hand, and let's start. This needs to be completed in addition to your other risk assessments, which would cover your venue and your session activities. It's an essential document to help groups to explore the specific risk of COVID transmission in the RDA environment, and it's a required step in your return to activity. You'll need to send in your final version of your COVID-19 risk assessment, along with your trustee Road to Restart checklist, for approval by the group support team at RDA National Office before any activity can take place after lockdown. You may find it helpful to appoint a Covert Officer, if you can, to take charge of the COVID risk assessments, the preparations for the return, and to take overall responsibility for making sure everybody knows what's expected of them during COVID. In Scotland, it's worth noting that it's a health and safety requirement, but elsewhere it's simply best practice and will accept the person completing the COVID risk assessment as the default officer for the group. This COVID officer role might be best suited to the person at your group who would usually carry out the wider risk assessments for you. It could be a trustee or a coach, but might be a volunteer with health and safety experience who understands the process and is able to focus specifically on this area. Sports Scotland also offer a useful e-learning module for COVID officers, which outlines the responsibilities of the role, and it also covers the helpful information about the COVID virus and how to mitigate risks. You can visit www.sportscotland.org.uk/COVID-19 for more information. So before you begin, here are some important things to think about. You'll need to familiarise yourself with the current RDA COVID guidance and policies, and also the government rules for your area. You can visit myrda.org.uk and also gov.uk for more information on these. Have a think about your venue. What activities or situations might cause transmission of the virus? Also, who's likely to be most at risk? Think about all the users of your venue and specific groups who are deemed more vulnerable and for whom the consequences of infection could be extreme. Think about the likelihood that somebody could be exposed. If you can't remove the specific hazards, you need to be able to control the risks. A methodical approach is really key here, so don't be tempted to rush your assessment. Speak with others involved, ask them for feedback into risks, concerns, and how they might be harmed themselves. You might like to sketch a plan of the environment and the zoned areas at your venue if it helps you to visualise the activities taking place. Try imagining yourself in other people's shoes and how people might move around, for example, coming into contact with different surfaces, different items, and other people on site. When you can, physically walk through your plan, then walk through it again. It's amazing how issues become more apparent after several test runs. It's also a good idea to make a list of anything you might need to buy or to prepare in advance as you go along, such as signage, some sanitizers, cleaning products, or any additional pieces of equipment that you might need to avoid sharing and unnecessary contact. Don't forget that a risk assessment is a dynamic document and is always a work in progress, so keep revisiting it periodically to make sure the information is always current. And also make sure you keep up to date again with the most recent RDA guidance and information from the government. So we're now going to move on to the completion of the risk assessment itself. We've prepared a helpful template to help you to plan, and you can download this directly from the Road to Restart page on the MyRDA website. We've added it in Word format so that you can edit and add to it as needed to make sure it's relevant to your group. We've added some core hazards just to start you off, but don't be tempted just to accept and send the template in for approval as it is. The list of hazard areas is not exhaustive, and it's unlikely to be enough to cover every activity at your group. You can use your own version if you prefer, but we strongly recommend that it does still cover all of the areas in our template, just as a minimum. If you're not confident with IT or don't have regular access to a computer, it is possible to handwrite your document, but just make sure that your writing is really clear and that others can easily read the information on it. When you're sending in your risk assessment to us at National Office for approval to restart, make sure that you do keep some copies at group level just for security. You'll of course need to add or rewrite these carefully when you're reviewing them for accuracy and relevance later as time goes on. So moving on to the template document itself, which we've got up on the screen here, we've used a basic HSE template, and you'll see the following columns for completion. What are the hazards? These are the activities, the locations, etc., that could be a source of COVID transmission. What are you doing or that you've already done? Well, this is fairly self-explanatory, and complete this with the protocols that you've already put in place to mitigate or control the risks. Do you need to do anything else to manage this risk? Again, these are things that you might need to finalise nearer the time if they can't be done immediately for practical reasons, or things that simply just need to be done on an ongoing or periodic basis, so always think ahead. The action by whom and action by when columns. You mustn't leave these blank. Tasks and actions should always really be designated responsibility of an individual or a small group of individuals maybe, and you'll need to add a by when, and this could be a date or possibly something just more general, such as on arrival at every session. And completed, date and initialed. This has to be filled in once the action's been undertaken. Completion of this column isn't essential before sending in your risk assessment for approval, because you simply might not have had time to finalise it just before your session, but it must still be completed at group level before any activity can take place. So let's now just take a quick look at some of the hazards that we've identified as being typical of an RDA environment. Again, these are not exhaustive and are pretty much specific to COVID-19 in this case, so please make sure that you adapt these to your group's needs. Looking at the screen here, you've got car parking areas, access and use of the venue, volunteers, staff and participants transmitting infection. You've got waiting and viewing areas, toilets and hand washing, tack and equipment, riding hats, something that's useful to think about. It's often overlooked, particularly if you haven't yet brought participants back. Mounting and dismounting, taking payments and cash handling, emergency procedures, and don't forget at the moment it's a requirement for test and trace on your site. So you need to keep details of anyone attending, that's volunteers, participants and any supporters, for 21 days in line with government policy. You might also want to consider installing what's called a QR app at your venue to support people who are using the NHS app. So a QR code, you can go to www.myrda.org.uk and visit the Road to Restart pages, and we've got a special sub-page there that shows you how to log on and complete this online. When you've completed your COVID risk assessment as fully as possible, just make sure it's signed and dated by both the person who's carried it out and also another trustee. So essentially those two signatures, if they're both trustees, they shouldn't be the same person. It's just an extra layer of protection for you and for peace of mind to have someone to proofread your document to make sure that you've covered everything you need to. It's important to share your findings, as with any risk assessment, with your team and any relevant stakeholders. So make sure everyone involved and understands the risks, the protocols that you've put in place to manage them and what is expected of them to ensure that everyone can stay safe. You must always review your risk assessment periodically. Make sure you involve your team, and you must always revisit the assessment after any incident or any changes to guidance, rules or processes. Make sure you keep your risk assessment as up to date as possible. Ensure that a current signed and dated version is available to anyone taking part on demand. When you're ready to formally apply to restart activity, you can post your COVID and signed COVID risk assessment along with your Road to Restart trustee checklist to the group support team at RDA National Office. We're happy to receive them by post or scanned and sent via email to groupsupport@rda.org.uk. Please make sure that scan quality is clear enough for us to be able to read them easily. Then, once we've reviewed your application documents and addressed any queries, we aim to respond to you within 3 days at the moment. We'll hopefully be able to formally sign off your group to get started again. Don't forget as well to always keep your regional and county teams up to date with your plans and to go to them for help and advice. They're there to support you and always on hand for guidance. Additional guidance on the coronavirus situation can be found on the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, and the government websites, in addition to myrda.org.uk. Don't forget as well that the group support team, really friendly, and we're always on hand to give you a help at the RDA National Office, can be contacted at the group support email address or by telephone 01926 492 915, and we're always on hand to answer any questions you might have, no matter how small. They might seem trivial, that's what we're here for, so make sure you make use of our team. We really hope that you found this helpful, and we're really looking forward to being able to support your group's journey back to reopening again in any capacity. So don't forget to keep us up to date with your plans and progress. We're really looking forward to hearing from you.